r/ask Reddit. What the worst I don't fit in here experience you've ever had? I'm in my late 20s and going to the same clothing stores I've been going to for over a decade. Seeing 12+ year-old girls. Feeling lost. Not knowing where to shop. My casual clothes have literally not changed since I was a teen. My professional wardrobe is so different from my casual clothes that it looks like two different guys in my closet. Went on the company ski trip, which sounds posher than it actually is, and we have to pay for it out of our wages. Had to sit on a dinner table with the heads of the company and some other high up people from different companies, and the stuff they were talking about in terms of leisure activities were well out of my league. When you try to join the conversation and you get a patronizing smile from one of them who doesn't engage with you, the conversation dries up pretty quickly. Finished my dinner and ducked off to the bar. If you're paying for it out of your wages, it's not a company ski trip. It's your own ski trip that your company is invading, lol. I once interviewed for a job and was taken around the office to meet everyone and see how things worked, but it was one of those types of places where they do morning cheers. Everyone is ultra peppy and cutthroat. It was a sales job with competitive territories, and the energy was just too much. As an introverted, laid back and uncompetitive worker, I 100% did not belong in that environment. Honest question. How do you manage to build a career in sales being introverted? Just like everybody else, the difference is that you end up physically exhausted every day. I watched a lot of Pokemon when I was like 8. I went to a local anime convention and I was so confused and awkward. Everyone was in cosplay and talking about anime, and I just sat there looking at my Pokemon cards all depressed. The same thing happened to me, haha. I was like 11 and my mom took me to one of the VGCs in the area. I was so ducking pumped. I spent the whole car ride getting ready and putting the finishing touches on my team. But then I got there and I was so uncomfortable. I'm honestly not even really sure why. I just hated it and the people were bothering me. I think I expected to be around a bunch of other kids my age, but there were a lot adults there instead. I ended up sitting on the ground and doing homework at some point because it was just too much for me. I did make it to the quarterfinals in the junior division, but my heart wasn't in it. In 2007 I went to what I thought was my first AA meeting. It was being held at a church, and when I walked into where the meeting was supposed to take place there was 5-6 other men sitting down. I took a seat, and after a couple of moments pass, the meeting starts. If my memory is correct, I was asked to introduce myself. So I said, "My name is and I'm an alcoholic." After a few moments, one of the men let me know that I was at a Sex Addicts Anonymous meeting. I apologized and left. Felt really weird about it at the time, but now I just laugh about it. My first holiday in foster care was Christmas 2010. I was 14 years old, a freshman in high school. I missed my family and I didn't know anyone there except my foster parents. I felt completely like an alien amongst 50 people. I was young, scared, and alone. I went on my phone and my foster mom raised her voice and told me to get off. That made me snap and I started tearing up, so I went outside in the cold to cry by myself so I wouldn't make a scene. I cried behind a car in the dark in the snow that fell a few days prior. This old man comes outside and calmly talks to me. He tells me that he used to be in foster care too. I don't remember what he said exactly, but he made me laugh and feel a little better. That old man turned out to be who I would call Grandpa Ernie a few years down the road. He passed away a couple springs ago. He always made sure everyone felt welcomed and always would break tension silence with a joke that made everyone laugh. He went through his own hell growing up and he did his best to make sure no one else had to. I just dropped everything to pursue a career in art. It's been my dream to open up a shop and to just make things and paint. I've been drawing all of my life and I'm honestly not bad. A few weeks ago, I joined a local artist collective. The first meeting we were showing our art, and my heart dropped. Everyone had these gallery level social justice pieces and there I was with my greeting card and wedding art. I've always struggled with confidence and imposter syndrome, but that hit me hard just how out of my league this group was. I'm staying in it because I think it will challenge me to expand and grow, but damn do I feel incompetent every time I see them. I'm a college professor. Got my first job out of grad school. Quit at the end of the second year. Found out while quitting that they were about to fire me. It was one of the 10 largest universities in the USA. Today I teach at a tiny liberal arts college. Been there over a decade, and they vote me Professor of the Year an average of once every 3 years. Here I fit, there I didn't. There was big, research driven, prestige hungry. Here, they want me to take good care of the students. That I can do. I love my job. In southwestern Australia, I was there working for a bit and went out with some locals. We were walking home from the bar when one of them said he wanted to go for a bit of a longer walk. So we detoured around another block. Suddenly we were walking through the bush and then we pop out the other side near this sketchy house. A really sketchy dude comes out, looks at me and asks one of the guys who I am. They say I'm Canadian and he asks me a few questions, presumably to hear my accent. Then they hand him a few $100 and he hands them a few small bags of drugs. On the way home, the guys I'm with stop, open up one of the bags and smash the contents up on a rock and snort it. I politely decline. Suddenly everyone I'm with is high on meth. Once I was familiar with the area we were in, I got the duck out of there. Recently moved to China due to work. China is fine and all. Food is exceptionally nice. And the general cost of living is significantly lower. Although I do speak some Mandarin and am somewhat familiar with China due to my mother being Chinese, I do often feel the differences, like how alien this culture here is to me. It's a very odd feeling, seeing all these people that look the same as me, yet completely different. I'm Indian but was born and raised in the US, and I visited India when I was 7 and again when I was 18. I don't remember the first visit too well, but the second time, I had the exact same feeling you described. My mom was born in a village, and if my dad hadn't decided to get his masters in the US or hadn't met my mom, I probably would have had a completely different life. I'm a white guy who's into alt-rock and I had some Jamaican friends at work. They invited me to a basement party they called a splash, exactly like what you see in the Sean Paul Get Busy video. I loved it and everyone was very cool, but man did I feel like I stuck out. My mum and dad have been divorced since I was 8 years old, so 20 years. My dad has a girlfriend who he's recently moved in with. She has adult children and young grandchildren. Anyway, it was my dad's birthday a little while ago, and I went over to see him, and over the time I was there, more of his girlfriend's family turned up. I didn't fit in. My dad has kept us very separate until the last 12 months, and I've worked really hard on my relationship with my dad over the last few years, but had thought he wasn't able to give me the relationship I wanted to have with him, and I'd come to terms that that is how he is, except it's not how he is, at all, because he has that relationship with his partner's children and grandkids, and I sat there feeling ridiculously out of place. I didn't fit in. He only lives 25 minutes away, but they've all made very little effort with me, but they all see each other a lot. I didn't fit in, and I left after 4 hours, driving back to my home with tears in my eyes, wondering why I was so upset, and then I realized, it's because, once again, it's just another situation where I don't fit in. And I'm not gonna lie, that little 8-year-old girl inside of me cried a lot for a week or so. It was by far the worst I don't fit in here experience I've had yet. It broke my heart a little. Actually, sorry for rambling. I guess I kinda kept that to myself. I was at a low point in my life. Unemployed, no support, hungry and dressed in worn working class clothing. I was out with a buddy who had as little class as I did at the time. We somehow had managed to find a few dollars and figured we should go have a drink. Unfortunately, the place we went to was full of sailors. Not burly longshoremen. Not Popeye and not shifty-eyed cutthroats. No, these were the kind of sailors that owned and raced yachts. We'd go in, walk out to the patio and stop. Everyone there was white. Everyone there was dressed in white. The entire patio went quiet, and literally everyone stared at us. We immediately turned tail and left. I think we ended up sharing a bottle of cheap wine under a bridge that day. Funny thing is, I bet we had much more fun under that bridge than we would have had surrounded by all those clean young snarticles. The ball at my college the week before graduation. People have compared it to college prom. I never wanted to go, but I won a free ticket in a raffle, so I couldn't pass up saving $90. Doesn't mean I fit in there though. You should have sold it for like $50 cheaper and you profit. After work party with my colleagues, we were just eating some snacks before heading home, but I realized I had nothing in common with any of them. I never wished so hard to have said no to something I was invited. I worked at a place that encouraged a Friday after work beer and munchies gathering in some unused office space. All I could think about was drinking on an empty stomach and driving home in rush hour traffic. I was older by 10 years than the average worker and married, but no kids. Management was older than me. They were younger, single, and no kids. They had empty apartments to avoid. I had spouse and cats to go home to. I don't even like beer. Took me 2 years of working at a place to realize just two-faced and toxic most of my former co-workers were, except for a handful. Realized most of them didn't like me, so I left. Me. Right now, it's part of what led me to seeing that I want to go to grad school and not continue working in this field. My first time out drinking after I turned legal age, I ended up in the smoke pit of the strip club talking about Jesus. Going to back to school night. I am a single dad and not wealthy. Well, not financially. My kids go to a school in a very affluent neighborhood. The dad to mom ratio was roughly 3/10. They all had very expensive clothes and jewelry. Here I am in my shorts and a t-shirt. Most of the cars were Lexus, BMW, Mercedes, any were Tesla, Maserati, or some other exotic. Luckily my kids don't seem to feel it, nor are they mistreated, so that's good. I've always felt like I fit in two very different crowds. I'm very at home with a group of redneck friends out camping and hunting for the weekend, and I can fit in at formal business dinner type settings. One time I was invited to what I thought was the latter by my employer. I'm very middle class, but I was completely out of my element. It was a silent charity auction for disabled children. They had various donated items up for auction. You could add your name to a list with your bid, and someone else could add a higher bid under that. The cheapest thing they had to bid on was a Barbie doll. It was $375. I didn't bid on anything. Later that evening I was talking to a co-worker who was a friend of the owner. He told me he won a horse. Yep, didn't fit in. I can't imagine being in a point in life where I can bid on a surprise horse. They're so expensive to feed, let alone house properly due to the space they need. I went to a classical concert in a fancy manor house of sorts at the border between Scotland and England. They served some food in between the acts of the concert where you would sit at small tables to have it. I was the only one below the age of like 60 and everyone looked very posh. Tried making some small talk at one of those tables, but the old ladies with their hats on seemed to be not very keen on talking with a peasant like me. You could really see it in their faces. At any gathering of my ex-in-laws, they drank like alcoholics, which many of them are, and I don't drink at all. The more drunk they got, the less I fit in. They had 3 topics of conversation. 1. How drunk they are. 2. How drunk they were last weekend. And 3. How drunk they plan to get next weekend. These were grown adults with kids. As someone who doesn't drink at all either, listening to people just talking about those 3 things gets really old really fast. Fortunately I now know a lot of people who have more interesting things to say than that. At the drive-thru window at Dutch Bros Coffee, they're super sweet, cheerful, and it's their job to connect with customers. But I feel like I need to rehearse what I'm going to talk about before I get there. Social anxiety keeps my a loyal Starbucks customer. I'm sorry. I'm in a metal band and love playing the music and love listening to the music, but when we play shows I feel out of place among the other members of the scene because nearly everyone I know and interact with are potheads, drunks, party animals, and I'm not about that. I drink casually but don't get drunk as I fear becoming an alcoholic because my family has a history of it. In contrast, I'm very subdued and work hard to maintain success in my career. I'm the only white collar in the scene in my area, which makes me feel like an outclass, especially since a good portion of them who are blue collar make more than I do. LOL. I do like the people in the scene. Some are amazing friends, and the vocalist in my band is like a brother to me, but I sometimes feel uncomfortable with the whole scene. I also feel like an a-hole around them when I mention my career because I'm afraid I sound like I think I'm above everyone or something. But I can't imagine not playing music anymore. It feels amazing when I'm actually playing. I joined a sorority in college. That in and of itself was a major I don't belong here minbuck. But when I got my big, and I went to her house for the first time, I absolutely knew that I didn't belong. She and her mom live alone. Her dad passed when she was 12, in a giant house in one of the richest districts in Maryland. I pulled into their neighborhood and every house there looks like it's worth at least $1 million. Her mom is a high-up lawyer for the state and makes hella money. Like, they have a huge beach house kind of money. It made me uncomfortable. I grew up in a small rural town with not a lot of money, and being around so many people who could spend $100 and not even blink at it gave me very distinct I don't belong here vibes. Don't get me wrong. My big and her mom are wonderful, lovely people, just wealthy as duck. My friend and her family were living at a country club while their house was being built. I went to pick her up once and say hi to her parents, but because I was wearing jeans I had to use the employee entrance. That taught me I would never understand the wealthy. My friend is the type of person who's friends with everybody. I've known him since we were real little, so I'd say I'm one of his closest friends. When we hang out though, he gets caught up in making plans with all of these people whom I don't know, or I don't talk to at all. Being nice, I agree to just be around while he picks up and drops off all these people. Sometimes we go in their house and hang out. I'm the polar opposite of these people. I'm quiet and smoking isn't really my thing. So I'm awkwardly sitting on this person's couch while everyone is smoking and laughing with each other. I get all the attention from their dogs, so that's a plus. First time I went to a kink club as a young lady in my 20s. I was the only one under the age of 35 and probably the only who knew what a gym was. I've never felt so out of place in my life. Yeah, it was not for me at all. You ain't kidding about the gym comment. I was invited to a Somali wedding by my Somali friend, and I was excited to go. When I got there, I arrived 45 minutes after the time I was told, and I was still one of the first people to show up. When all the women started coming and they all sat everywhere else with their friends and family and not with the only white girl there. The one who invited me was nowhere to be found, so I just smiled dumbly at everyone I made eye contact with. Being the only one who doesn't speak Somali or even know anyone. So awkward. And yet, I have fond memories of that night. I'm a filmmaker. In my younger years I made a film that was received well and I got invited to speak at a big shot conference. Oscar winners, high-flying producers, big name actors. No one gave a shit about my little talk, and in between sessions I had no one to hang with. It felt like shit. After the first day of a 3-day weekend I went to my hotel room, had a panic attack, and cried to my BF via Skype. I'm a fairly confident person, so even as the weird one at school I never really felt out of place. But that conference was the worst. It was the only time in my life that I felt like such an awful, horrid, worthless loser. But I knew I had to stick it out if I wanted any sort of career in the industry, so I took a deep breath, gathered all the dignity and courage I could, and forced myself to go back the next day. I suffered through the quiet moments pretending I was back at school and didn't give a shit what anyone thought. It also helped a lot to put things into perspective, that the conference was going to be one of many moments in my career, in that people were just there to do business. I could potentially come back someday with some business for them and then people would talk to me. That was easy for my ego to understand. After I gave my talk, I actually got approached by some producers. They gave me their cards and I made some connections I still talk to this day. But that first day will always stick with me, and once in a while, when I'm feeling like a cokey ass, as I normally do, I think back to that low moment and it helps to reorient my thinking. Even if I had walked away from that weekend with 0 cards, it would have been worthwhile just for that change in mindset. I've had so many it's hard to pick the worst. It always hurts. But as I've got older I'm learning to cope and actually appreciate it for what it is. Looking back on my life, I've never actually fit in anywhere. I've coped and I've even made friends for a while. I'm not completely hopeless socially, not shy and happy to chat to anyone. I'm happily married, so I'm not completely repulsive. It's not even that people actively dislike me. I'm sure if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, people would turn up to my funeral and say nice things about me. But I've never found my people in the way that people talk about, and currently have no one barring my husband I could truly call a friend at all. I've realized that I'm always slightly different and out of step somehow, and that's what's behind it. There is just something about me that silently signals odd one out. I know in my heart that if there was ever a real honest witch hunt again, I'd be one of the first people implicated, because I've just got that wildebeest limping at the back of the herd vibe about me. The mob would pick me off and no one would really feel guilty because, well, she was a bit, you know, odd. I was recently given the cold shoulder by a group of people I've known for years, and it made me realize that I didn't fit in and wasn't cared for by this group of people either. It hurt a lot at the time it happened, but in a way it's also been very freeing. I think I might as well just be me and not worry about what people think are just going to end up not liking me anyway. Anytime I'm out with my husband's friends' wives, they get drunk and loud and shrill, and I just want to go home and watch British police procedurals on the couch. Actually, any group where the volume just goes up ridiculously. I feel like I'm 70 years old and need these kids off my lawn. But manage your freaking volume. When I moved with my family from a big city to a small town of less than 500 in South Dakota, at the rough age of 13, the very small class at the school I started mid-year knew little outside of the town and their church, and had all known each other since kindergarten. This was in 2007, so I was at the peak of my emo phase. Checkerboard Vans, eyeliner, etc. The whole bit. It blew their minds. They were all scared of me. It was quite lonely. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.